Thank you. Good evening. Unfortunately, my Vice Chairman is unable to be with us, the COVID, so I'll be reading the opening statement. We're summoned here to make decisions which will bind our authority from time to come. Let us do so in an atmosphere of dignity, goodwill, respect, and calm. May those decisions be just and fair, and in the long-term best interests of the people who live and work in our beautiful county of Dorset. Thank you. So good evening and welcome everyone to our meeting of full council on Thursday the 14th of July. It's a very hot evening, which you didn't need me to tell you, did you? But if gentlemen would like to remove their ties and jackets, please feel free. We are working with a consultant to arrange fresh air ventilation for the council chamber. At the moment, the plan is to fit a ventilation unit on the roof over the members' room. To calibrate the amount of fresh air correctly, we need to know what the CO2 levels are in the chamber to check how stuffy it gets. To this end, we've had 4 small sensors placed on 4 of the benches, so please can I ask that papers, etc. are not placed on top of them, in case you were wondering what they were. Thank you. So agenda item 1 is apologies. Susan, do we have apologies, please?
Apologies for absence have been received from councillors Janet Dover, Roland Tarr, Sarah Williams, David Gray, Mike Barron, Mike Dyer, Belinda Borden, Maria Rowe, Mike Parks, Rod Adkins, Stella Jones, Robin Legg and Emma Parker.
Sorry. I have real trouble with this microphone. I do apologise. Agenda item 2 is the minutes. I would like to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of May 2022. Are you all in agreement, please? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest pertaining to items on the agenda this evening? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is Chairman's announcement. Unfortunately, I have to report on the death of former Weymouth and Portland Borough Councillor Margaret Lester. And I've asked Councillor Paul Kimber to pay a tribute.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? I think we're fine just for the minutes. Margaret was a alderman, so if we can correct that. Chair, fellow councillors, it's my sad duty to say a few words about Councillor Lester. And clearly, Margaret, if I may say from here on, was one of Portland's great councillors. Margaret unfortunately passed away and given a great service to our Portland community, the Town Council and Weymouth and Portland Borough Council. To describe Margaret as someone who could not be won over is not easy to say. Margaret had strong views on the way the council should be run and the way she wanted to protect Portland. Margaret was mayor during the Olympic Games, and I was always pleased for her when she reached that accolade, because being mayor during the Olympic Games is quite something. If you've got time for a little side piece, when one of the countries won a gold medal, she had to round up the council to go down and cheer for Cyprus. So I'll always remember that when they won a gold medal, of course. Margaret had a great interest in the quarries, making sure people could still walk. the many pathways which were over the years, and she fought very hard for these pathways. She also had a great interest with the fishermen of Weymouth. I know when I was chair of the Harbour Board and the Harbour Committee, I didn't realise the fishermen at that time were up against so many rules and conditions, and at times it was a minefield. Margaret took all these on. When she debated, she took no prisoners, and she didn't worry about what people thought of her or that, and that was noted. Lastly, we're going through a great period. Margaret often would phone me late at night, especially if her views and my views didn't meet. And she would often quiz me. So I so move this little tribute to Margaret. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimber, and my apologies for missing her official title. And thank you for your tribute. Agenda item 5 is public participation questions and statements. Question 1 was submitted by Richard Lonsdale, but it's been withdrawn. So we move on to question 2, submitted by Jane Ashtown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A number of local media outlets recently reported that Dorset Council has received £135,000 from the government's Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. According to MP Chris Loder, these funds are to support Dorset Council in reworking their local plan. In particular, Mr. Loder claims that this reworking will allow the council to shelve the 4,000 houses proposed for the north of Dorchester. Given how unpopular this latter proposal is, and given the water quality, traffic, environmental, heritage, and cultural degradation this development would bring, such news is to be welcomed, as is the prospect of rethinking the overall plan. However, in a May press release, the government's DLUHC website lists North Dorchester as a garden village project in receipt of £135,000 to promote its development for housing. So this is puzzling. 2 different announcements about the proposed housing development north of Dorchester, and the same amount of funding in each case. The people of Dorset, and particularly Dorchester, could be forgiven for being confused. And amidst these possibly conflicting announcements, Dorset Council has not issued any statement or press release about receiving government funding which might clarify the situation. Indeed, since Councillor Flower's press release back in January, reflecting his concerns about the local plan, there's been radio silence in terms of changes to the plan as a result of the consultation well over a year ago, and silence on a timetable for moving forward. As taxpayers, we should be the first to know about changes to the plan. Can Councillor Flower clarify how this £135,000 will be used? Can he also clarify the status of the North of Dorchester proposal for 4,000 houses in light of this funding? Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. In fact, I would like to ask Councillor David Walsh to give you a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And good evening, Jane. And thank you for the opportunity to clarify this point. The £135,000 is in fact part of the Garden Communities initiative and is not related to reworking of the emerging local plan. Dorset Council has been provided with funding to evaluate the feasibility of bringing forwards a garden community in North Dorchester. And work is taking place with the involvement of local communities to consider options. The site at North Dorchester will need to be taken forward through the emerging Dorset local plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Question 3 has been submitted by Giles Watts, who's unable to attend, and his question will be read out by Phil Crowther. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At a recent planning meeting for town and parish councils on the 29th of May, Dorset Council published a timetable for Dorset's local plan, which shows submission of the new plan between October 2022 and March 2023. This is contrary to Spencer Flower's suggestion that he is negotiating a 2-year extension with the government, along with mitigation against failing the 5-year housing supply and housing delivery. In public, the council have been silent on the schedule for the local plan, and what changes they plan to make. Furthermore, they have not published any analysis of the initial public consultation that took place over a year ago. Can the council please confirm the schedule for the local plan going forward and clarify what further opportunities there will be for consultation with the general public when a revised plan is published? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. We will receive a response from Councillor Spencer Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to Giles Watts for the question. It gives me a chance to just clarify that concerns he's got. The dates quoted at the meeting with the town and parish councils were the dates from the current adopted local development scheme. We've not yet confirmed the revised programme, but I'd like to do so later this year. There'll be a further opportunity for people to comment at the next stage when a revised version of the plan will be published. There will also be public examination where all the issues will be considered by an independent inspector before any plan is adopted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Our next question, question 4, was submitted by Sandra Reeve, who is not able to attend, and her question will be read by Aidan Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the recent changes to building regulations which came into force on the 15th of June that require new homes in England to produce significantly less CO2. I also welcome the phasing out of gas boilers by 2025, which will support the change towards heat pumps. These changes pave the way for the future homes and building standards in 2025, which will mean that all future homes will be net zero ready and will not need retrofitting. However, it is within Dorset Council's power to act faster. It is wrong that new houses are built now that will require retrofitting in only a few years' time. It is also wrong that houses are not being built with rooftop solar as standard in this time of very high energy prices and rising cost of living. Will Dorset Council use its powers to make sure new developments conform to the highest possible standards of insulation and have rooftop solar as standard for clean, renewable energy generation?
Thank you. And we have a response, please, from Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. And in her absence, I'd like to thank Sandra for this question. Building regulations are being stepped up to improve the energy performance of new buildings. And this is a vital step forward in tackling the climate emergency. Planning applications must be considered in the context of the adopted local plan and government policy, which currently do not require such measures to be included. However, Dorset Council is reviewing its policies on new development to ensure that development is optimised for minimising its carbon footprint and resilient to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Question 5 was submitted by Alistair Chisholm, who is unfortunately unable to be with us, and his submission will be read by Jane Ashdown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In June, Dorset Council generated a report on the 5-year housing land supply and its impact on the Purbeck local plan. The conclusion was that, due to the new guidance issued by Natural England about nutrient neutrality for nitrogen and phosphorus, no new developments in the Poole Harbour watershed, which are not yet started, can be included in the 5-year housing supply. As a result, the Council is unable to identify a deliverable housing supply for the 2021-26 plan period. Presumably, this advice will also impact any similar developments in the local plan, such as DOR 13. Please, can the Council provide more information on the implications for both the Purbeck and the Dorset local plans? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we will receive a response from Councillor David Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Jane. Please pass on my thanks to Alistair for raising this very pertinent issue. Dorset Council will be assessing the implications of the need to secure nutrient neutrality across the various catchment areas that affect Dorset. In the case of Poole Harbour catchment and the Purbeck local plan, Dorset Council is awaiting clarification from Natural England on the degree to which current nutrient mitigation measures secure nutrient neutrality for both nitrogen and phosphorus. Dorset Council will provide updates to its evidence and understanding of the issue as and when it has further information to publish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Our last question, question 6, was submitted by Tracy Cozy, who's not able to attend, and the question will be read out by Aidan Dunn.
Thank you. The County Hall site in Dorchester is barely used. The library has moved, the County Court has closed, and many of the remaining buildings have few permanent staff, with many people choosing to work from home. This is a large site with considerable potential for brownfield development that would have a much lower carbon footprint than any greenfield development in the area. Would the Council consider a full redevelopment of the site by adding it to the official brownfield register with the purpose of providing affordable and social housing for the people of Dorset?
Thank you, Aidan. We will receive a response to this question by Councillor Tony Ferrari.
Thank you, Chair. We're very aware of the changes occurring in office use over recent times and made the strategic decision to either reuse Southwarks House or County Hall. The decision was taken that, despite the reduced numbers of staff coming in every day, significant staff numbers still needed an office location, and Dorset Council needed to retain a substantial building in Dorchester. We will continue to look for efficiencies across our office usage, but the site needs to be retained. Although it did not generate housing, the solution adopted was to lease Southwarks House to the NHS. Doing so enabled the NHS to provide additional health facilities for Dorset residents. This was the right use of the building, offsetting any carbon footprint increase and bringing healthcare facilities into the centre of Dorchester. That, in turn, is generating increased footfall and trade to local businesses and substantially reducing Dorset Council's property costs, all of which is a fantastic outcome for Dorset residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Agenda item 6 is public participation, petitions and deputations, and there are none. So agenda item 7 is announcements and reports from the leader, and I will pass you over to Councillor Spencer Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's a warm night, so I'm not going to dwell too long on this topic. You'll get the bulletin as usual, published after the meeting. But I wanted to cover on a couple of things that are really relevant today. The one being the cost of living crisis that government have made some support for. We as a council have worked hard with government and others in the Dorset Together network, supporting residents and so on. And it's interesting I'm just going to pick a couple of things. We've paid out 15.2 million of energy rebates to 101,635 households 85% of those identified are eligible. And we're obviously working with well, Aidan knows this better than I, but we're working with the remaining households to make sure they get the financial support that they deserve as well. So we're working on that. We've got another household support fund. There's lots of funds around, and I just hope they all get to the people that need that support at this particularly difficult time. In talking about support, I'll touch on the support we're giving to Ukrainian refugees at this very, very difficult time. And I asked the question the other day, and I've got the fact that 559 have arrived in the county, 200 of whom are children. And so far, 148 sponsors have signed up for the monthly thank you payment. So there's a lot of work going on together, again, in that topic, the Dorset Together Network providing support to those arriving for local sponsors. So again, a huge piece of work on that. We're going to have a thing called a Dorset Council sofa session. And I'm not sure if Laura might want to add a bit more to this in a moment, but it's something that she came up with. I think it's a really good idea of going out with no agenda, sitting on a sofa or standing near a sofa in a few spots around Dorset and giving the public a chance to ask questions that are particularly relevant to their situation in life. And I think that's really good. And it shows that, we've got an open mind and we want to listen to some of the views of the residents of Dorset. So I shall certainly participate. I think I've already said I will come and help on at least one of those occasions. Dorset Education Conference. And again, if there's a question, I shall refer through Chairman to Andrew Parry in the sense that there were a couple of really important pieces of work done on that around education in Dorset. And I think I attended the one last year, actually, which was, I think, at St Mary's, as it was at the time, I recall, in a marquee. Very good, very well attended. Over 100 Dorset schools and professionals and partners were there. And I think that's a huge compliment to Dorset Council and its approach to dealing with education in Dorset. And finally, you heard me say at the previous annual council it was, about the mission statement and the key priorities, sort of become a cabinet commitments update, which I felt we ought to keep a tab on progress. So there's a standing item on all future cabinet agendas where topics can come up, depending on, we've had a look at these, and they will be in the forward plan. So if you want to look in the forward plan, you'll see what the topic will be at the next meeting. The first one was Ray Bryan talking about climate and ecological strategy, and I thought that was very, very good. It was very informative, it was factual, and I thought it was very, very useful for anybody, members apart from the public at large. And then on the 26th of July, which fits in neatly with a couple of the questions we've had asked tonight, it's anticipated that Councillor Walsh and myself will be able to give an update on the Dorset local plan. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. I believe we have a question from Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you very much to Councillor Lear. It's a very good question, actually, because one of the things we've done, we've extended our involvement with DULUC in the sense that we didn't just talk to ministers and the then Secretary of State, but we've had conversations with the Chief Planning Officer. So there's the embedding thing is that the civil servants stay and ministers come and go, as we've experienced. So do Secretaries of State. I've actually had I've written to the new Secretary of State on Tuesday of this week. I can't expect to have got a reply, it's only Thursday, but I have set out the ambitions of this council and the asks that we've got, and all the signs are still positive, but I think the important thing now is to continue with that strong lobby so we make sure we get the best outcomes to the people of Dorset.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Councillor O'Leary, are you happy with that? Would you have a supplemental? No, I'm happy. Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Jones, please?
Thank you, Chair. Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton, as seen on BBC TV last night. I just wanted to, I haven't been snapped up yet. I just wanted to come back on the Household Support Fund, which is very welcome. But one area you didn't mention is the support that's been given to food projects. We at the Vale Pantry have had, or we will be getting 5,000 shortly, which is very welcome. I just wondered whether this fund actually was going to be able to continue for the remainder of this year, i.e. is there going to be any more coming out, or have we seen the end of it? Because the support is needed more than ever. We're so busy. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good question, but I wish I had a good answer. Can I take it away? I think it's right and proper that we take that away, and we're to get officers to have a look at that, and we'll come back to all members to let you know what the future looks like in terms of additional government funding.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. Thank you for starting to talk about the cost of living concerns, and this has dominated very much our area in Portland this week. I just wondered if you've got any, I wonder if I can try and drill down a bit further, whether the Dorset Council is making any additional plans. At the moment, the Treasury are given a very glum forecast for the next financial year. Thank you. I'm happy to wait till next meeting if it's put you on the spot.
Again, take that point away. I think it's important we get the facts. I mean, I could give you a view, but I think it'd be better if it's factual. We'll come back to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Councillor Matt Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. As the leader did briefly mention the local plan, I've been waiting for this opportunity somewhat. As it's become very apparent over the last few meetings, the issue of the local plan is very hot on the lips of most residents of Dorset. In a recently conducted survey that was done by myself to all 183 local planning authorities in England, to in excess of 100 town councils in England, only 20% of councillors feel that local plans have a positive impact on their communities. Only 17% of councillors feel that planning is democratic. Is that of a concern, and should we as Dorset Council be looking at a different way of doing things to try and encourage local plans to be more inclusive, not only of councillors, of town and parish councils, but also of the residents of Dorset? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Thank you.
A good point you've made there, isn't it? As you probably knew. I'd like to think we were in the 20%. I'll get the impression in this chamber that we do take having a local plan seriously, and that what the benefits from it are huge if we get it right. It isn't just about housing, it's about a whole range of other things. And if you have the opportunity to take a bit of time, have a look at the white paper and what it says about the development, the emerging change in the standard methodology, because that does cover some of the points that you've made around that local connection, that ambition of the people, and listening more to the local needs as opposed to just chasing housing numbers through the standard methodology. And I mean, I've read it, and actually I feel, and whether David wants to add anything to that, but I feel very comfortable that we are in the right place, that we've actually challenged government on many of the areas that they themselves have now included in the white paper as being things they want to change to make it more relevant to the local people. So I think Dorset is in the right place. We're right at the vanguard of the changes that are coming from government, and I'm very comfortable. I hope that members in this chamber support that we are going to end up with a local plan that does meet the needs and aspirations of the people of Dorset. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. Are you happy with that? Thank you. Councillor Simon Gibson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a good-looking Simon Gibson. Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Byron Quell from Blandford. Chair, through you to Leader, I was wondering if you could just give us some more detail regarding the support Dorset Council is giving to the Ukrainian families that have come to the county. as everyone here will know, our great country has supported Ukrainians to come and support us, to come and stay with us in the county. I would like to just understand our policy and whether it's the policy of this council to support large developments being created to house Ukrainians, as is being proposed in Blandford. Because it was my understanding that we want these people to come into our communities, to be part of our communities, and not ushered off into single developments, again, as being proposed in Blandford.
Thank you, Councillor Quayle.
If I can take the first point, the last point first, Byron, no, in terms of having designated housing for a particular group of people. There is a general housing need in Dorset, and it's what we will fulfil through our local plan. So I don't think there's any mileage in that particular rumour that's circulating a little bit. But in terms of the help, through you, Chairman, can I refer to Councillor Laura Beddow to expand a little bit more on the detail? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Byron, for your question. I'm not aware that through the Homes for Ukraine scheme, it kind of does what it says on the tin, and so many of our residents have been really, really generous and opened their homes to, you know, give our Ukrainian guests somewhere to stay. Yes, that is the case. I'm not aware that we as a council have any plans to create any developments specifically for any group of refugee. As the leaders just said. On the support, we've got a comprehensive support package for our refugees, not just Ukrainian refugees, but all the refugees that we welcome into Dorset. Specifically on the Homes for Ukraine, we're looking at a variety of things. We're looking at how we can support childcare. We're looking at how we can support English lessons for both parents and for children. We look at, through the Government Homes for Ukraine programme, we look at safeguarding, we look at the suitability of accommodation, and then, you know, there's everything that goes with that. So it really is a comprehensive package, and I would urge everyone to have a look at the Homes for Ukraine support page on our website, because everything's there, but I'm not aware that there's any decision to build anything specifically for our refugee guests. Our Homes for Ukraine are very much welcome in Dorset people's homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quayle, are you happy with that? Yes, Chair. Thank you. We now have, Councillor Weller. Councillor Weller.
Following on from what Councillor Beddow has just said, we're hearing an awful lot about Ukrainian refugees now, quite rightly so, and I'm delighted with the welcome that we've given them. But I wonder whether, when we have the figures, and I'm not asking to put you on the spot now, but it would be quite nice to know how much we're continuing to do for refugees from Afghanistan who seem to have almost slipped off the agenda because of the Ukrainian war. And I think that there are many people who are as concerned about them and the children from Afghanistan as the Ukrainian children. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Laura.
Sorry.
Thank you, and thank you, Kate. Absolutely. I would have to get the numbers and up-to-date information, but I'm really happy to provide an update on our Syrian and our Afghani refugees, because you're absolutely right. Homes for Ukraine has been the most recent and made the news, but you know it would probably be timely to update on the support that we're offering to all our refugee guests. Thank you.
Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Chairman. I liaise with the Purbeck group of Ukrainian people that host. And as far as I can gather, when we've been meeting, most of the Ukraine families really want to go back. They don't really want to make permanent homes here. And as soon as the war is over, they will make tracks to go back. So I think, you know, the idea of thinking of permanent housing is not a good one. But certainly support all you can. And I encourage, you know, all of my people in the Wareham area and Swanage that I've been supporting to actually make sure they get the contact with Dorset Council and they ask all the questions with Help and Kindness, John Sloper, and that is working very well. Thank you.
Did you have a question, Councillor Ezard? Thank you.
Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to Councillor Spencer Flower for his keen interest in the village of Broad Windsor and his interest in community assets. It would be nice if we had a good new footpath between the community assets, but that's another story. I did send Councillor Spencer Flower a note about a company called Bennaman, BENNMANN, which has had quite a lot of government money and is very much a favourite of George Eustace, which is doing a trial project, 6 of the 58 council farms in Cornwall. And the project is to cover slurry tanks, and the biomethane is going to power the Cornish Council highways fleet, and the digestate is going to be sold as fertiliser. Can you give me an assurance, Councillor Flower, that in your very good discussions with Cornwall Council that you've spoken about before?
Excuse me, Councillor Christopher, this bears no relevance to the leader's report.
I think it's hugely relevant because we, of course, have a council farms estate as well.
Of course we do.
We're very concerned in the Conservative Party about climate change.
With respect, Councillor Christopher, it would have been good if you'd put in a question.
Yes.
Did we have any more questions relating to the leader's report? No? Thank you very much. We now look at agenda item 8, questions from councillors. Our first question is submitted by Councillor Andrew Starr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Andrew Starr, representing Upton, Lidshot and Morden. Given that Dorset is blessed with many outstanding protected sites, some benefiting from much needed statutory protection, and in light of the fact that the Council has quite rightly declared an environmental emergency, can I ask for a response to the worrying news that the Environment Secretary has declared his intention to scrap the Habitat Directive as part of the forthcoming Brexit Freedoms Bill? The stated aim of this move is to apparently cut red tape, or as some see it, make it easier for developers to encroach on nationally and internationally important conservation areas, given that the present legislation has been used in numerous cases to protect habitats and species, and that this move has been objected to by such organisations as the RSPB. Can I ask if this council will be making representations to the Environment Secretary expressing their concern about this seemingly backward step in environmental protection at a time when it is needed more than ever? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Starr. We will ask Councillor Ray Bryan to respond.
First of all, can I thank you for the question, because it highlights some very important issues. Indeed, we are blessed with outstanding natural environment here in Dorset. Under the Environmental Act 2021, which has already been enacted through Parliament, there is a mandate for a local nature recovery strategy. Dorset Council responded to the government's recent Nature Recovery Green Paper with protected sites special consultation in May 2022. This included future options for wildlife designated sites. In it, we said, in order to deliver the government's ambitions for nature recovery, there is a need to strengthen the protected site network. There is strong scientific evidence that the UK's most important wildlife designations, which are European sites, which includes special areas of conservation, the SAC, special protected areas, the SPA, are effective in protecting the habitats and species for which they are designated. In the consultation response, we supported options which provide even greater protection to the most important wildlife sites, emphasising the need for protected sites to be given the same level of protection that is currently given to European sites. This will prevent the deterioration of the SAC and the SPAs and deliver improvements to the condition of sites of special scientific interest. We ask that the process of designating sites should be expedited to deliver the DEFRA promise of protecting 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030. Dorset Council places great value upon the protection and stewardship of our unique environment, reflected in commitments expressed in our policies, including statutory local plans and our climate and ecological emergency strategy. The government has committed to reviewing retained EU law following Brexit via a Brexit Freedoms Bill. Dorset Council will pay close attention to this bill as it progresses through Parliament, including any draft consultation stages, and we will continue to respond as necessary once further details of the bill are known and where it is appropriate to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Are you happy with that, Councillor Starr?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Question 2 has been submitted by Councillor Belinda Borden, but will be read by Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kelvin Clayton on behalf of Belinda Borden. The recent sudden announcement by Stagecoach that they would be terminating their bus service from Exeter to Lyme Regis at Seaton from the 31st of July has left many people in Seaton, Lyme Regis and the villages in between very anxious indeed. Many rely on the service to get to work, to attend medical, dental or hospital appointments, to go shopping or for leisure travel. Devon County Council has agreed to subsidise the new service, but the majority of passengers are, we are told, from Lyme Regis. I hope that Dorset Council will also agree to provide support to retain an adequate bus service between Lyme Regis, Seaton and Exeter. Could the criteria for and the process by which decisions are made by Dorset Council over which bus services could be subsidised be explained, particularly when the route crosses county boundaries? And what assessment could be done of the impact on community resilience, mental health and the cost of living crisis and the climate and ecological emergency strategy and action plan if people lose their jobs or have to increase the use of private cars when buses they rely on are withdrawn? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. We'll receive a response from Councillor Ray Bryan.
Councillor Clayton, will you please convey my thanks to Belinda for the question? It's no secret that buses are very much my priority at the moment because we're facing some unprecedented situations. When deciding a bus route receives subsidy, a number of factors are taken into consideration, and each route is considered on a case-by-case basis. The main priorities are: does the route provide home-to-school transport for Dorset Dorset students? 2, does the corridor form part of Dorset's inter-urban network? And 3, are there other public or community transport alternatives for residents along the route? The number of passengers that use the service is also taken into consideration when assessing the value for money. Dorset Council does not currently subsidise Saturday, Sunday or evening services, and in 2016, before my time, Dorset Council withdrew support for all market day services. These were the ones that ran from villages to market towns on market days only. With regard to the impact on the community, Dorset Travel has a remit and limited resources to help people get from A to B. The wider remit of mental health and the cost of living crisis and the climate and ecological emergency rests with other services within the council. They may have resources to assist with public transport if it meets their criteria, something we are seriously looking at the moment. I am currently waiting for a date from the BSIP team, which is the Better Service Improvement Plan at DFT, to explain why our bid failed. Because let me just explain, our bid was perceived by most councils as being one of the best that was submitted, but it appears that we didn't quite fit the criteria. Ours was to provide a better bus service across Dorset, which is exactly the criteria. We met with Baronsville a few weeks ago and asked for an explanation. Sadly, nothing received so far. Chris Loder, our MP, has again asked at a recent Transport Select Committee meeting in London and was assured that an explanation would be given. My patience is now running out fast. To enable us to become carbon zero by 2050, we need to provide the Dorset residents with a public transport system that gives them an alternative to use of their car. Please be assured this is top of my list, and I mean that.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. I think he means that. Sorry. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Clayton?
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick supplementary. Would Dorset Council consider a joint subsidy with Devon County Council to enable the new operators to provide a similar level of service to the current well-supported route?
Yes, in answer to that question, we are continually working with the other counties that surround us to make sure that where we have cross-border issues, we are dealing with them. I'm currently in serious discussions with our Dorset Travel team to find ways of resolving the current situation that we're receiving. And I think it's very important that these conversations continue. And as I said, I've held a number of meetings on this in the last week or so, because the bus companies are under tremendous pressure with the fuel crisis, and we are having to live in the updated world, but we are working to resolve it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bryan. Question 3 is submitted by Councillor Alex Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. This is a much simpler question, I'm afraid, very parochial. But I hope, whoops, I better put glasses on. In response to the climate and biodiversity emergency and our aim for Dorset Council to become carbon neutral by 2050, we all know that the public always demand we plant more trees. However, many experts agree that preserving mature trees does more for biodiversity and air quality and cooling, particularly relevant in a heat wave, than a new sapling will for approximately 15 to 20 years. It takes that long for a new tree to capture carbon at a rate approaching that of a mature tree. Therefore, planting 2 new trees to replace 1 felled tree is not a solution to our problem. The solution is to save existing trees from danger as well as plant more successional trees. In my ward of Litchett and Upton, we seem to have many cases of felling of mature trees on possible or proposed development sites before planning is agreed. On the principle is that they haven't got a TPO, so the owner can do what they like. But could Dorset do more to publicise that anyone, especially parish and town councils, could ask for a temporary TPO to be put on significant trees before there's a perceived, whenever there's a perceived risk of felling, which could then be assessed later when planning applications are considered. Could a blanket TPO be put on all trees on a site as soon as planning application is registered to prevent trees disappearing before planning conditions are agreed? This can be assessed, that's fine, later, but it puts a stop order on them. So could Dorset Council do more to promote the use of TPOs by parish and town councils or even concerned neighbours? Because it's surprising how many people don't know that anyone can put one on.
Thank you, Councillor Brenton. We'll receive a response from Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much, Councillor Brenton. Very relevant question. It is fully acknowledged that trees play a vital role in terms of amenity, biodiversity and carbon capture. Tree preservation orders, TPOs, are made by local planning authorities where they have an amenity value that justifies the tree's preservation, assuming it is justified. Whilst biodiversity and climate change can be taken into consideration, these alone are not grounds for making a TPO. Trees within conservation areas are also protected under the provision of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The Council's website provides information about tree preservation orders and how to notify us if people have concerns over a particular tree. But it is acknowledged that the relevant pages could be improved to provide better and more proactive information about TPOs. This is something we are rolling out as part of our improvements to the web portal. Under current legislation, local authorities can only make a TPO if it appears to them to be expedient in the interest of amenity to make provision for the preservation of trees or woodlands in their area. Orders are provisional until confirmed 6 months after they come into effect, but should only be issued where it is considered necessary to do so. Therefore, it is not possible to issue blanket TPOs as a default position, as each tree or group of trees needs to be assessed. However, biodiversity net gain is due to become a statutory requirement in 2023, and retaining existing trees will therefore be potentially significant way of ensuring a net overall benefit can be achieved. The LPA will be exploring this further as part of its policy approach to biodiversity net gain and the climate and ecological emergency strategy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Brenton, do you have a supplementary or are you happy with that?
I was very pleased to hear that we're thinking about this, but the whole point is that a significant tree rather than individual tree. I'm not saying blanket. I was not asking for a blanket TPO on the whole county, but on significant trees on proposed development sites.
Our next question is submitted by Councillor Nick Ireland.
Thank you, Chairman, and I will have a supplementary. Allegations have been made in the press, social media, and directly to some members of this council that Coombe House opened prematurely with too many pupils, insufficient staff trained to or having experience to the required level for the needs of the pupils, some fire doors that didn't open, windows without safety glass that were subsequently broken by pupils, and, if that isn't enough, some pupils escaped from the school site. Are any of these allegations true?
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. We will ask Councillor Andrew Parry to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Coombe House School is an independent special school situated on the site of the Dorset Centre of Excellence. The building is owned by Dorset Council. The school is run by a company called the Dorset Centre of Excellence. The company structure has a Chief Operating Officer, a COO. This role is currently vacant and being recruited to, who reports to the Independent Board of Non-Executive Directors. The chair of the Independent Board is Mr. Ian Comfort. The premises were purchased as part of Dorset Council's legal duty to ensure that there are sufficient suitable places in education for children and young people with special educational needs and disability. This decision was met with 92% agreement in the public consultation and with cross-party support. Responsibility for the running of the school, including pupil wellbeing, staffing and the curriculum, sits with the independent board of the Dorset Centre of Excellence and the COO, and the school's leadership team. The school received its notice of registration from the Department of Education on the 6th of May 2022. The inspection report from Ofsted associated with the registration was very positive. It independently confirmed that appropriate policies, procedures and safeguards were in place to the school for opening. The independent board considered the Ofsted report and the advice of the Chief Operating Officer and head teacher. It decided for the school to open in a staggered start on the 16th of May 2022. The school opened on that day with 15 children. It was the Independent Board's understanding that the individual needs of the children had been jointly assessed by Coombe House leadership and Dorset Council SEND services, and that they were allocated to a class with an appropriate number of suitable, qualified and experienced staff. It was also the Independent Board's understanding that a significant amount of planning and training had been undertaken since January 2022. With most of the staff, the number of children attending the school would increase each day, reaching capacity of 47 by Wednesday of that first week. The board was assured by the COO and the head teacher that the staggered start could be managed as all of the children had been involved in transition visits prior to opening. At the point of opening, there remained challenges with fencing supplies and delivery of contract to fence the school site. The site boundary with welded wire mesh fencing led to some requirement to infill in small areas with Harris fencing. This had been risk assessed. Although this is not ideal, it could be managed. There were instances of children climbing over or simply moving the fence in the first week. A child left the site and walked home, which was close by. Some matters were dealt with straight away with an appropriate intervention from staff as part of the school's management of its boundary. There were no intruders to the site. Some areas of the site remain under development. All windows on the fenced school site have the required glass. There was an incident where a child threw a stone and a window was broken. No one was hurt. All other areas where there is a plan for use in September are scheduled to have suitable glass and or covering by the time they are brought into use. The independent fire assessment undertaken states, fire safety on this small site is adequate and will be further improved with planned works over the summer. However, the first week of the school was bumpy, with children and staff coming together, and despite assurances from the COO and the head teacher, not sufficiently well planned to ensure that children could be safely and effectively managed. Following a letter of concern to the council, the executive director and the chair of the board reviewed the situation and determined to close the school for 1 week on the 23rd of May. This joint decision was the first stage in bringing forward an enhanced cooperation element of the commissioning framework. The chair of the independent board considered, along with the executive director, the matter of how the leadership of the school had managed events, both in the lead up to opening and during the first week. And as a result, the head teacher is presently not in school and has been communicated previously. The Chief Operating Officer, Mark Blackman, resigned from his post. The enhanced cooperation allows the Executive Director and her team to provide support to the board to ensure everything that we require to be in place and to ensure safe and effective delivery is in place. This will be welcomed by the independent chair and his board. Following half term, 32 children on roll have been in school for set days each week, but none full-time. And some of the original 47 have now not been considered by the school to be ready or able to return. The council are working with those families to source a suitable education offer elsewhere, as they would do with any educational placement which does not work for whatever reason. All these families have a single point of contact at Dorset Council, and I am confident they are being kept informed as to why the school feels we need to make these changes. In acknowledgement of the help needed at the school, Sean Kretz, the head of Westfield Art College, the executive director and her leadership team, have been providing day-to-day support to staff and children, and support and challenge to the board to develop a suitable recovery plan. The work continues and involves other members of our special school system too. The school has now closed for the summer on Friday the 8th of July, in line with other independent schools. This allows a crucial couple of weeks at the close of term to ensure that staff have an opportunity to make sure all training and development requirements are up to date. It will allow for some vital work to be completed on site in preparation for a September start. We are continuing to recruit at pace, again to ensure sufficiently experienced staff will be available for September. We plan for the school opening in September with 36 children on roll, slightly lower than planned initially, but this allows a secure and steady growth as we progress with plans and the school's senior leadership team recruitment. Children and young people are at the heart of our decision-making, and we must make sure the school can offer first-class education that we know we can provide them by supporting the board, the staff, and our families. There is not an overnight solution to this. It will take a bit more time than we had envisaged, but we are confident that it is going in the right direction. I appreciate your patience as we support the independent school in settling. I was on the school site just last week, and the children in school were engaged and positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Do you have a supplemental, Councillor Ireland?
I do, thank you, Chairman. I got several, but I can only ask one, so I'll go with this one. So all members of this council are corporate parents, as you'll be aware, and so I find it extremely concerning that allegations have been made in the press, social media, and directly to some members of this council that parents of children under our care have been cajoled, badgered, and even bullied into accepting placement at Coombe House when, in their opinion, the site wasn't, still isn't, and in some cases never will be suitable for their child's needs. Is Councillor Parry aware of such allegations, and if so, what is he doing about it?
Madam Chairman, if Councillor Ireland has evidence of that, he should forward it to the appropriate director, which is, of course, the Executive Director or the Corporate Director for Education, Vic Verma. All allegations are always taken seriously by us as corporate parents, and you know my feelings on that matter to be very sincere. We do want the best for our children. I've spoken passionately in council time and again about all our responsibilities as corporate parents, which is why I've worked with great fortitude with our colleagues, with councillors who are going to be chairing a joint scrutiny committee next week. And of course, that particular committee is chaired from members of his political group to ensure impartiality.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rennie.
As Councillor Parry said, this matter is coming to a committee next week. But it would be really interesting if we actually had that document as it's now in the public arena and has been spoken about today. As yet, we've not had any papers for the meeting next week. And that would be really helpful if we could see this and have time to read it, because it was good news and would be less worrying than what we've been hearing and what we've seen in the press. So can I ask if we can have, all councillors could have a copy of that document tomorrow?
Thank you, Councillor Rennie.
Madam Chairman, if I may offer the briefest of responses, I know it's slightly unconventional for us to take an additional supplementary from a different member, but I will address this point. Just prior to Council this evening, I did meet with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Joint Scrutiny Committee. Part of the reason was to ensure that we were able to bring forward a presentation that members of that committee would feel would be of benefit and would see positive outcomes for our children and young people. I would like to say that part of that presentation, because of the sensitivity of the potential to identify or to narrow the field and possibly identify a child or young person, we will require final sign-off in legal advice before we can share that in a wider audience. The chairs of the committee may wish to comment separately, Madam Chairman, but I want to do everything I possibly can to ensure that not only does next week's scrutiny committee, but future scrutiny committees, because we accept that Coombe House School is a phased project. It will have a distance to run over a considerable period of time as we build those numbers. So it isn't a flash in the pan piece of work for scrutiny, it is a solid piece of work that will have a longevity to it.
Sorry, Councillor Rennie.
Of course, Madam Chairman, a copy of my reply to Council will be circulated.
Councillor Parry, may I ask you to stay on your feet for agenda item 9, the Youth Justice Plan, which I would like you to introduce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to present the annual Youth Justice Plan for 2022-23 to Council. The important work undertaken on a pan-Dorset basis, bringing together key partners working intensively with those young people at high risk or who have entered the criminal justice system. The fact that overall the numbers remain low in Dorset is testimony to the work and dedication of the Youth Justice team and our partners. And we recognise the importance of their work in helping keep our young people and the communities safe. Under the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998, there is a statutory requirement to publish the annual Youth Justice Plan, which must provide specific information about the local provision of youth justice services. The Youth Justice Board provides guidance about this and to be included in the plan and recommend a structure of the plan. The draft Youth Justice Plan and the Dorset Combined Youth Justice Service is attached in Appendix 1 of the report. A brief summary of the Youth Justice Plan is also provided in this report. Chairman, I'm happy to confirm to Council that the Youth Justice Plan for 2022-23 has already been subject to review by the People and Health Overview Committee on the 3rd of May this year, and then by Cabinet on the 17th of May. I'm grateful to both committees for their input and support, and therefore I'm in a position to recommend approval to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Parry. Councillor Ireland, were you going to second the recommendation?
Yes, Chairman, I'm very happy to second. It's an important part of what we do, and it's just for noting, really, and we should support it.
Thank you. I don't think there's any need for debate. It's really a matter of acceptance or not. So I think we'll go straight to a vote unless anybody has absolute passion to comment before we do. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Susan.
Yeah. Thank you. The vote is now closed and the results of the vote are 60 members in favour. The The vote is therefore carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, members. Agenda item 10 is community government review. I shall ask Councillor Spencer Flower to introduce the report and propose the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in this chamber because it's not far short of what we saw last time it came into this chamber for a decision. We've decided, the working group, and I'm grateful for colleagues, leaders and deputy leaders across the council for the work we've done as a working group. We've decided to remove Weymouth, Winterbourne, Farrington, Chickerell and Vale of Allen because there's some more further work to be done, and as such we need really, it's sufficient amount of work, Chairman, where we ought to go out and consult the public again. The rest of the recommendation before us is exactly, with a few tweaks, following the consultation, exactly what we've seen before. So I'm pleased to remove the recommendation set out in the report, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Flower. I believe Councillor Fry wants to second the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second this report. A lot of work has gone into producing this report, and we have closely followed the Electoral Commission guidelines. As having been part of the working group, I'm reassured that it is a good report. The challenging areas have been taken out to allow further time to be spent on these in order to ensure all parties' views and opinions are considered. I would like to acknowledge the considerable hard work put in by Democratic Services led by Jackie Andrews. Thank you to the team, please. I hope the colleagues across the chamber support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. We have Councillor Heatley wishing to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I was a member of the cross-party working group. I think we'll all agree that this is a particular subject where it is very important we have cross-party agreement. Probably the biggest single problem were the issues surrounding Weymouth and the other parishes around there, and also Chickerell Town Council. I am extremely grateful as a Weymouth member that it has been removed from this review. It seems to me that we ought to be able to find a solution which everyone can accept, and at this stage I think this is the best solution. I'll be voting for this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. Okay. When you're a local councillor, it's sometimes very difficult to get information, and when there was a presentation to group leaders, I suddenly felt quite left out in the cold. Now, I know it's nobody's fault, but we were trying harder in the next election. But if that could be on the serious, on the serious side, if you could consider the lone councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor O'Leary. Sorry, Councillor O'Leary, we have a response.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very grateful for Councillor O'Leary being so gracious as to let me respond to Councillor Kimber. Paul, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. We do it on Teams. If you've got some questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. Okay?
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary. Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Any other members wishing to speak? Sorry. Yes, sorry. Councillor Dunseith, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll be supporting this. I think it's a very good and very well-written piece of work. I'm delighted that you've seen sense and taken Chickerell out of what we thought within Chickerell was a land grab. Totally undemocratic, no knowledge. Chickerell Town Council had no knowledge of what our large neighbour was up to. But now the cat's out of the bag. We will be girding our loins. Well, we've already girded a bit, but we'll be doing it a bit more, together with my colleague, Councillor Worth, and making sure that democracy is served and the people of Chickerell have their say. And it makes no difference to us what larger bullying neighbours would like to happen to us. We will have our say and we will be listened to. We will go down fighting.
Thank you, Councillor Dunseith, and I know you will have your opportunity. Councillor Weller.
And I can't sit and listen to that. It's simply not true. Weymouth tried very hard to get into consultation with Chickerell Town Council over very many months. There was no negotiation, there was no mediation, there was nothing. However, that's by the by. I don't think it is helpful in any way for fellow councillors to stand up and accuse other people of being bullies. That doesn't help, because ultimately we do have to discuss that. And perhaps if we had sat down and discussed in a more civilised way earlier on, we would have got to a point where we would now be voting on the entire Dorset Council area instead of leaving out some, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to make a decision for the entire county and the whole boundary. And I think it's an enormous shame that those areas are being removed at this time. And sadly, I won't be supporting it just for that reason. I think everything else is terrific, but I'm very disappointed that we didn't do the entire area.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. We do seem to be moving away from actually the job at hand here. I have Councillor Worth wishing to speak. Is it to do with anything that's been said, please? Or are you against this particular agenda item or supporting it?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd like to say that I'm quite happy to support this, but Chickerell will fight on in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer-Flower would like a word.
Chairman, away from what's on the agenda. The stuff they're talking about was taken off the agenda to make it easier to get it through the council tonight. I think we are where we are now, Chairman. Move business, Prem, maybe.
Unless there's any other people wishing to speak, I'd like to put this to the vote, please. I'd like to take recommendations 1 to 3 en bloc. And over to you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now open. Councillor Gibson, could you vote, please? Councillor Ryan Hope, could you vote? Councillor Trike, could you try voting again for us, please? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. The vote is now closed. And the results of the vote are 55 in favour, 3 against, 1 abstention. The recommendations are therefore carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Agenda item 11, Independent Review Panel. I'd like to ask Councillor Spencer Flower to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm going to rely on the fact that all members have read the report, page to page. It's a fairly short report. I'm going to move the recommendation, but I'm aware that Councillor Nick Ireland wishes to move an amendment, which I am supportive of. I think it's a sensible addition to what's before us. So I will move it as it's set out in the report and leave it for Nick Ireland to move it as an amendment.
Councillor Ireland, are you still prepared to second the proposal? Thank you.
Yes, I am, Chairman. I'm very happy to. As Spencer Flower has mentioned, I'll second this, but I would also like to propose an amendment. It should be, just for people's noting, is that we've passed this past Jonathan Murr to ensure that it's actually possible to make this amendment in the first place, and that Councillor Spencer Flower and the other leaders of the respective groups, Councillor Les Fry, Councillor Kerr Sutton, are also in agreement. So I hope we can get cross-party support, because in the end, what I'm going to propose is going to affect any councillor, and it can affect any councillor. So I'm suggesting an amendment to the dependent carers allowance in the scheme of members' allowances. Can you put it on the screen, Susan, please? That's the amendment. Unfortunately, it's lost the amendment bit, so it's not obvious. But essentially, the first sentence in the scheme reads all the way up to £11 an hour. So it says a dependent carers allowance paid to members up to £11 an hour, i.e. actual expenditure occurred up to a member maximum of £11 an hour. And my amendment is the next section, which begins, or in exception and by prior agreement with the service manager for Democratic and Electrical Services, which is Jackie at the moment, invoiced expenditure above £11 an hour. So it's meant to be an exception. It's meant to be used, sparingly, and it's obviously dependent on Democratic Services agreeing with the particular council member and agreeing the expenditure as well. It's not an open checkbook. And it just seems obvious because, to me, there are people who are presently carers for people in this, the people are members of this chamber who are carers for people at home, and there have been in the past and there will be in the future. And it seems, I think, a good thing to do, that they can attend council business and not be significantly out of pocket, which some of them are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Just for members' information, the amendment refers to our Constitution, Part 5, Scheme of Allowances, Note 7, which is why it's hard to find in your paperwork. Would anybody like to speak to the amendment? Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think this is a very good and fair amendment that Councillor Ireland's put forward. And as Councillor Flowers said, he's going to support it. So I do hope that everyone else will support it too. Yes, I certainly personally know of people that have dependents that they look after. And I know that actually the amount of money that they pay for their carers is at least double or more per hour than this allowance is giving. So really this will help towards the remuneration of that. So yes, very, very fair and a very good amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ezard. We'd like Councillor Kirby next.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Andrew Kirby, Winterbourne North. For once, I think it's a very good amendment. I think it's fantastic, especially for people like me that have just been fleeced for preschool fees and nursery fees. So I think what I'm looking for is actually a bit of clarity. I don't want to. Will this cover preschool fees and nursery fees for those with the dependent children, or is that not within the spirit of it? I'm quite happy either way. I don't have to pay for it anymore. She's going to school in September.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby. It's just occurred to me that I don't think we've had a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Flower.
Or Nick read it out, so I'm very happy to second the amendment.
So we're back to Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid that I can't support this amendment. I think that we get a tremendous amount of money for being a councillor as it is with £14,000, and I'm afraid I can't support any extra funding towards that, particularly with our current budgetary issues and with the cost of living affecting our residents. So I'm afraid I'll be voting against this, but I do have genuine sympathy for those in certain circumstances.
Thank you for your opinion, Councillor O'Leary. Any other views? No, in which case we will vote on the amendment first, please.
The vote is now open. Councillor Brooks, could you try voting again? Thank you. All done. Thank you, everyone. The vote is now closed. The results of the vote are 54 in favour, 4 against, 2 abstentions. The recommendations are therefore, the amendment is therefore carried.
Thank you very much, Susan. So we will go forward to debate the motion as proposed and seconded by Councillor Flower and Councillor Ireland, including the amendment. Thank you. No opinions, in which case we will go to the vote on this, please. Recommendations A to F inclusive and including the amendment as stated. Thank you.
The vote is now open. Councillor Bolwell. Councillor Byron-Quayle. He's left. Thank you. The vote is now closed. The results of the vote are 55 in favour, 3 against, 1 abstention. The substantive motion has been carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone. Agenda item 12 is Honorary Alderman / Older Women. I shall ask Councillor Spencer Flower to introduce the report again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not going to mess around with this. I'm going to move recommendations set out in the report.
I understand Councillor Mattall wishes to second the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the Council's Chairman of Audit and Governance and in line with the alterations made in Recommendation 2, I am more than happy to second this. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Sutton.
I'm not going to waste our time with an amendment, which I know for sure I'm not going to win, but I'm really sorry. I can't support this. Firstly, I don't understand, and the report doesn't explain how this benefits our residents. And, you know, that's the basis on which I think we should be making our decisions here. Secondly, whilst £100 per title is a tiny sum in the context of Dorset Council's overall budget, it is a massive sum for a parent struggling to feed their kids or struggling to pay the gas bill. Also, the paper, it doesn't make a projection of the total cost per annum of implementing this scheme. And doing a rough, back-of-the-envelope calculation, looking at 2024, our next election year, and obviously some members will stand down and some will fail to be re-elected. And it looks to me like it's going to cost at least 2,000 in that particular year. And that's not to mention the staff time administering it. And thirdly, I also think deciding on which councillors' contribution has been outstanding and which councillors hasn't been outstanding could be really controversial and divisive. So overall, yes, the sums involved are modest, but at a time when many residents are struggling to make ends meet, I really think they're entitled to question why we are doing this. Whether you've been a councillor for 5 years or for 25 years, surely your reward is in knowing that you've made a positive difference to people's lives. For example, in helping a parent get the right support for their SEND child, or indeed helping keep your local youth club open. So I understand that what I'm saying isn't popular here. I completely understand that. But I have to say that I think this is anachronistic, and I don't like it, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel like, I'm going to support this because I feel over the years we've lost a number of our traditions and our heritage, and I think this is part of it. My grandfather was a councillor, a Labour councillor for 43 years. He was mayor 4 times. He did that at a time when there was no remunerations, and it was very nice for him to, at the end of his service, to receive acknowledgement for that, not just from his residents who returned him time and time again, but from the actual authority he served and helped shape. And I think that it is a nice piece of heritage. We no longer have prayers in meetings. We're banished to the basement to do those. We don't sing the national anthem. We don't do this. We don't do that. And I'm afraid we're losing a tremendous amount of our heritage and history and culture. And this is just a tiny bit to keep that. And I think a lot of our residents would appreciate that. Thank you. So I will be voting for this.
Thank you for that, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Lacey-Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this because I thought my views were a bit different. However, if I have the opportunity to agree with Councillor Sutton, I'm going to take the opportunity because it doesn't happen that often. I don't think, well, it doesn't. I don't think that longevity of service necessarily equates good service, let alone outstanding service. I don't think there's any need for us to necessarily award ourselves with fancy titles. If we are deserving of something that notable, then let's take a page out of Les Fry's book, who got a pretty impressive title. And so I don't see the need for us to be doing this. It's not a good use of our time. It's not a good use of our taxpayers' money. I don't see the need for it.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'll declare an interest here. I'm an honorary alderman of Weymouth and Portland because I was previous mayor and the length of time in which I served. And I'm very proud to be an honorary alderman. But we're now in the 21st century, and this is a new council. So that's my reticence in supporting this. And I absolutely agree with Councillor Sutton. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on now, so I can't read it. But the ordinary term, who's going to decide that? I don't think I will have served 16 years. I'm not sure whether I will have done or not because I'm not counting. But if I haven't, have I been more than ordinary? Have I been extraordinary? Who knows? But I might think I have, you might not. So, no, I think it's open to too much misinterpretation. We don't need honorary aldermen in this venue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weller. Obviously, this is entirely up to people's judgment. You're either for it or you're against it. I'm not sure that a debate is useful. Councillor Ezard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I totally agree, actually, with Councillor Sutton and the others, because I don't think that actually 16 years is enough. 40 years maybe, or exemplar things that people do, but not as of right to have 16 years, which is practically nothing really. I don't think that I've been on the council that long, but when I added it up, I have. But I mean, I wouldn't think that I've been extraordinary, and I certainly wouldn't think other people thought I was. So probably a bloody nuisance. I'm sorry about that. But I must say that I don't agree with this, and I think it's very, very difficult to carry this out in the future. So.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ezard. I think we're going to go straight to the vote here, unless somebody feels that their evening will be ruined if they don't get an opportunity to speak on this. Okay, to the vote, please, Susan.
Thank you, Chairman. The vote is now open. Councillor Belinda Rideout, could you try voting again for me? Thank you. And Councillor Peter Wolf, please could you try voting again, please? Yeah, okay. Thank you. The vote is now closed. The results are in favour 21, against 36, 2 abstentions. The recommendations have been lost. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Susan. It's going to save the chairman's budget quite a lot of money. So, agenda item 13, urgent item, excuse me. Urgent items, agenda item 13, and there are no urgent items. And agenda item 14 is exempt business. There is no exempt business. I will close the meeting at
6 minutes past 8.
6 minutes past 8. And please will you remember to take your handsets to Hayley, who's at the back of the hall. Thank you for coming and safe journey home.